Now, joining me in the studio is my panel. Let's open it up to a bit of debate, shall we? We've got Martin Dewbs, who is the Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party. We've got Ashley Frawley, who's a sociologist at Swansea University, and Mike Parry, who's a journalist and broadcaster. Let me start with you, Mike Parry. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think everybody who works in the National Health Service should be vaccinated to the maximum amount if they're going to be dealing with patients. I've listened to all your experts tonight on your show, but without doubt, there are cases now of patients catching COVID from the health workers who are treating them. The health workers should give them the best possible care. Dr. Roger Steadman wrote to the Times today, it is not reasonable to expect the NHS to continue to employ people who have made personal choices that without doubt increase the risk to the patient. It does increase the risk to the patient. We all know what having the vaccinations is all about. It's about attacking the virus. We're the most successful in the world at doing it. Why do some people want to opt out? People in the health service want to opt out. Would a fireman go into a burning building without wearing the protective gear that he has to do his job? And a health worker...
They did go into a burning building at the very beginning of the pandemic, and now we're going to fire them.
We didn't know enough about it then.
That's even worse, if we don't know about it.
We didn't know about it then, we know about it now. 70,000 people might have to be laid off. 70,000 people, in my view, is not a lot compared to the 1.4 million who work in the National Health Service. Therefore, we can get by without them. There are already 100,000 vacancies in the health service. The health service is massively overstaffed with middle managers and all sorts of health boards. Move the workers down a bit into other areas, because they are saying that those who will be sacked or laid off will be moved to other areas which don't deal directly with patients. So bring in some NHS workers who are not currently dealing with patients, who have been vaccinated, and let them work with the patients.
Right.
The whole justification for this, though, for the lockdowns and so on, is to protect the NHS, to stop the NHS from being overwhelmed. And now suddenly we can we have tons of capacity to suddenly do away with all of these people. I think there is a tiny additional risk, but we also have to think about the additional risk of not having enough staff. We have got enough staff. We've already got an enormous waiting list. The people who are not going to be treated by the ones who will be fired, who will be moved to being pencil pushers and so on. We have to think about the broader picture. It's not just about COVID risk.
It's madness.
It's about the broader risk to people's health.
Martin Dewbs. So according to Mike Parry, we can take these qualified people like brain surgeons, we can put them in a cupboard to do paperwork and get their manager in to do their
I didn't say that.
Instead. Thoughts?
We have to make a basic choice. Do you want a fully staffed NHS or a fully jabbed NHS? Because you cannot have both. They've tried brinksmanship, they've tried coercive control, they've tried bullying, they've tried threats of the sack. And actually, the true number is 125,000 if you include those who've only had one jab. So we're looking at 250,000 shortfall in NHS staffing added to the current 100,000 because of what? This COVID cult. It doesn't work. It won't work further. Surely by now, these people would have taken the jab if they wanted to. They don't want to. And the government must accept that this will not work. And if they go down the route of no jab, no job, how on earth are they going to say, you're talking about people giving the best possible care. How can you give the best possible care with 250,000 staff shortfall? You cannot. Friends of mine can't get chemotherapy. My son has been waiting for a hearing test for 2 years. From the extreme to the minor. There's a massive shortfall. That will only be exacerbated by these mandates. Mike, you must admit, it's brutal, it's inhumane, and has no place in a caring society.
We cannot let a minority group suddenly disrupt the working of the NHS, and that's what they're doing. 23% of the people who've said they don't want the vaccine are designated as British white, OK? So they don't have the ethnicity argument, which I can see and I understand and I support. I don't know why they won't have the jab. And that's a very small minority group who are disrupting the work in the NHS, which has performed brilliantly all this time. They're being very selfish. It's being selfish to put other people at risk just because you won't accord with the majority.
Sacking people is pretty selfish.
But
it's not if they're disrupting the system. I'm afraid you've got to get heavy with them. How far do you go in saying, oh, well, you can work in the NHS under your own rules and do whatever you like? How far do you take that?
That's exactly what it's about. You've encapsulated it really well. It's not about life and death. It's not about risk. It's about these people who won't toe the line. This has become a proxy for a culture war. And I think it's got parallels in Brexit and so on, where it's like this group of people who are acting against their own interests, who are voting against their own interests, and they bring the whole country down with it. The actual health implications, which are tiny in terms of a tiny additional risk, and actually may even be detrimental, as we've just discussed, that's besides the point. It's about it's waging a symbolic war against people who won't get in line, who won't follow the path, who won't do the right thing.
Charles has been in touch saying it's a bit rich of people complaining about unvaccinated staff when they were happy to let those same people look after the relatives when there was no vaccine, and they were.
But there was no vaccine. There was no vaccine then. There is a vaccine now. You know, all the top people, the Academy of Medical and Royal Colleges says all health and care staff should choose to be vaccinated. It couldn't be clearer.
But the reasons why they're choosing not to is because they've made a judgment. I mean, certainly some of these people will have ideas in their heads that we may not like, we may not agree with. But the majority of them, if you look at their rationales, they have been exposed since the very beginning. They've caught COVID. Some people make the argument about microdosing, and they have argued that they have a robust immune response. And therefore, they are not actually making an informed judgment that makes sense. And we have to allow some people.
They're gambling with other people's lives.
Laying off the NHS workers when we are already understaffed is gambling with people's lives.
No, I'm afraid it's not, because in the longer term, the NHS has got to be radically reformed anyway. This should be the start of that programme. We all agree with that, don't we? It's massively overstaffed.
Reform the NHS by having 250,000 staff shortfall. Yeah, nice one.
It's about saying these ideas don't belong in the hallowed NHS.
Mike, I'm interested in your sentiment, because to me, this is one of the challenges with all of this for me. The National Health Service became the National COVID Service. Now, the only risk to patients that you are focusing on is the risk of transmission of COVID. That's it. You seem to start, middle and end there.
No.
What about the risk of people, if you lose tens of thousands of people that won't be able to access their cancer services, won't be able to get diagnosed with heart disease or whatever else it is that goes on? There is not just COVID that is a risk to the health of this country.
Well, I know that better than anybody. I suffer from dilated cardiomyopathy, OK, and have done for 17 years. I've missed 3 appointments at my hospital, Harefield, outpatient appointments, to have my regular checkup because of COVID. From the very start, I've said this idea, save the NHS by adopting all the lockdown measures, was madness. I was very anti-lockdown. And if we'd been anti-lockdown, we wouldn't now be in the position we are with the NHS and the strains we're putting upon them. That's my view of it. And I've suffered. I've suffered because I can't see my consultant cardiologist.
Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I am pro-vaccination. I think it is a very good thing. I think that people should be aware of the benefits and make a judgment. And I think the right judgment in most cases is to protect yourself. I think it's a problem when you try to use policy to get people to toe the line, to send a message. We're constantly doing that. We use policy to send a message regardless of the collateral damage. And this is another example.
Josh, Josh says he works for the NHS and he is unvaccinated. And he won't agree to be vaccinated and will be sacked. And he's incredibly angry. He's he's thanking us for covering this story tonight. Claire says,
why will he not get vaccinated? Does he say?
But that's his business. That's up to him, and that's his business.
Yeah, but it's also up to us to make sure that a minority group don't lead us by the way they want to do it. We have to, as a majority, lead them in the way that's been most successful of anywhere else in the... Look, Martin, I'm sorry, but if that's the case, you can't suddenly say, well, we're going to sack them, and then they say they're not going to change, so we won't sack them. You've got to be firm about it. And the firm position to take is you either get vaccinated to work in the NHS, or I'm sorry, you have to leave the NHS.
No jab, no job was something that was a nightmare back in last summer when it was brought in by private corporations. Nobody with half a brain thought this would extend as far as the NHS. Nobody with half a brain thought this would extend to frontline critical care. And yet here we are. And we must look back over this. We must look back over this landscape and look at what kind of society we've become. Are we truly about caring? Or are we about mandating and enforcing the belief upon others? Now, we know that the vast majority of people who work in the NHS are women, 76%. We know disproportionately there are black ethnic minorities who have good reasons, and we know that women of childbearing age and who very recently were advised by the NHS not to take the vaccine. And so here we are saying these people must be sacked. They're the people who should be protecting the most. These mandates are cruel and inhumane.
Right, there you go. Martin Daubney, Mike Parry, Ashley Frawley, thank you very much for your insight. I want you all back because we've only just got started. This conversation will rumble on and on and on. Outdate the mandate. I stand by my sentiment. Donald says that he loves this programme, but he disagrees with me on this issue. That's not a problem. Charles says, thank you for raising this subject, which other channels do not cover. Outdate the mandate at gbnews.uk or hashtag outdate the mandate. Let me know where you stand on this issue, and I'll see you tomorrow night at 6.